Hello, everybody. I am so happy to see you, Arthur, who counts as everybody, because I got to tell you something. I saw what's in a number. First thing off, I tune in to Steelers.com, right? What's in a number? I seen 55. Arthur,
Okay.
just torching off the end, coming off the edge. What say you, my friend?
Listen, man, I love that 5'5". Now, anyone who knows me knows I didn't wear 5'5" until I came to Pittsburgh. I was 52 my whole life, even dating back to high school. But it was something about that 5'5", man. It looked perfect. And for me, man, I had the opportunity to communicate with a guy that I looked up to when I was playing collegiately in terms of Joey Porter, who was number 55, obviously here in Pittsburgh, historic in terms of what he was able to accomplish. But me being able to play and him be my position coach and just have that generational 5'5" connection, man, it was always awesome. But then you think about just the other people who've worn that number. I mean, it is some legends that put that 5'5" on, man. I mean, one of my favorite guys, just off the tip of my head, is John Cope. I mean, when you think about his impact on the field, and then he retires and he's like, you know what? I'm going to be the strength coach as well. That's what 5'5s do, baby. We're not just any number. We don't just dominate in one aspect. No, we're multifaceted. You think about Jerry O, Steelers' current inside linebackers coach, another one of my 5'5 brothers. And we can't forget about the absolute young stud, Devin Bush. I mean, the 5'5 legacy is in good hands right now. I'm just glad to be a small part of it. But man, when you look at that list, it is such an honor and very humbling to even be included a part of the people that wore 55 for the black and gold.
You know, you're right on. John Kolb, of course, the greatest of the left tackles for the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the first originators that really put the punch to practice when the rules of engagement were changed back in the late 70s, when defensive linemen, they could hit you with bell ringers and so forth. And you know, offensive linemen were like heavy bags on 2 feet. You know what I mean? You keep your hands in here. So John really pioneered the punch. He pioneered the kick step, all those things. He also pioneered weight training in the NFL, one of the early weight trainers. Won the NFL Strongest Man, was placed fourth in the world's Strongest Man. One of those
Absolute
guys,
beast.
truly legendary. Absolutely. Then you take a look at Jerry O. The guy's tougher than woodpecker lips. Gadzooks, man, that was a cat that played. There was nothing so special about him. He wasn't like a 4-5 guy or a 4-4 guy, but this guy could play, and I was always impressed with his ability to bring it. And of course, you got the legendary one-man renegade highlight reel, Joey Porter. What
yes.
about that?
Listen, man, Peasy is the walking highlight reel. It was times that I'm throwing up the kick in practice. I'm throwing up the kick collegiately at JMU just because he would do it. And even though at the time I wasn't even a Steelers fan, you respected his elite level of play from the outside linebacker position, a guy that could rush, could play the run, could drop into coverage. And for me, like I said, I got the chance to build a bond with him. I mean, a relationship that we still continue to this day, all throughout my 4 years of playing here. I mean, it was one of those surreal moments. But how often is that said when it comes to Steeler Nation, right? You think about just the legendary players, the numbers that they've worn, and how they continue to just be present amongst the organization and amongst the newer players. So that way we can continue to understand the significance of the Steeler way. We can continue to understand the standard being the standard and ultimately use that and utilize that on our day-to-day walks of life.
You know, Arthur, I think it's interesting because you referenced also the walking, talking unicorn himself, Devin Bush, and how excited we all are at seeing what he can do coming back from the knee injury and being able to get back on the field this year. You're excited, at least I'm excited, thinking you never know, because this kid could be the best of the best out of that bunch. Or, you know, he could take his place alongside the great Peasies and the great Moats. Don't cross the Moats. Those sorts of things, right? So the fact is, it's exciting to see what he's got, but truly, talk about legends. There's a living legend that just signed a contract extension, my friend, and his name is Mike T, going into his 15th year as the head man of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Absolutely, man. And the thing that I love when we get to talk about Coach T, for me, I'm always torn, right? Because I have this personal relationship with him where I was able to grow under him, my 4 years here, and just ultimately have him as a mentor for me, both on and off the field. But then we get in this role where I'm able to actually step back and just look at it from a clearly just X's and O's and statistical standpoint. And I still come to the same conclusion. I love this move. I think that for a couple of reasons, right? First off, you have the continuity. We know with Ben coming back this year, this is a year that we want to push all the chips to the table. We want to win now. And keeping Coach Tomlin at the helm of the ship gives you that best opportunity, because if you look around, I don't care where you're going, you're not going to find a coach that's going to be better than him that's available this year. And when you think about the potential of Ben either coming back for another year or hanging it up, you still want to have that calm and steady presence, that guy who's an elite level motivator, that guy who understands defense like the back of his hand, the guy that knows how to get the best out of his players. You want that guy in any form of transition that could potentially be coming in the future. So seeing the deal and knowing that it's going to take them for the next to 2024, I just think that that's a good length right there. It's not too long. He still gets his opportunity to prove his elite level coaching ability, his elite level motivation. But at the same time, if, in a couple of years it fizzles out or the team isn't going in the same direction, well, now you have that flexibility to go in a different direction. So as a whole, I just think that this is a really good move, retaining Coach Tomlin and extending him for the amount of time that they did.
I think you're exactly on, Arthur. I mean, look at it. He's in his 15th season, 15th. Think about this.
He's only 49 years old.
Absolutely. He tied Marty Schottenheimer, the great Marty Schottenheimer, as far as 14 consecutive seasons of winning seasons. I mean, that's terrific. Where do you get that consistency elsewhere in the NFL? Not too many places. Having him at the helm really creates that continuity like you're talking about, and that consistency of message and the thematics of that message just pounding across really the decade and a half now that he's at the helm.
Without a doubt. And I tell people this all the time. If you're trying to find the gold standard in terms of consistent winning, outside of Bill Belichick, you're going to be extremely hard. It's going to be a hard task to find somebody that is a better coach for as long as Coach Tomlin has done this. Never having a losing season at the NFL. I mean, it's to the point now where we've said it so much that people get tired of hearing it. Just think about how successful you have to be and how consistent you have to be for people to get upset at a guy never having a losing season for that long at the NFL level. That's crazy. But that just shows how dominant he's been. Now, I understand if we're talking from a recency standpoint as it pertains to the playoffs. Yes, we've won it more. Yes, we felt like we've left some things on the table. Me being personally included in that when I think about 2016, when I think about 2017. But at the end of the day, if he's not at the helm of the ship, we're nowhere in those positions. We're not even in that conversation to have these postseason, quote unquote, shortcomings and things on that nature. So as a whole, I just think that, man, him being back and him controlling that narrative, him being able to direct these guys and motivate these guys and encourage these guys, it's going to work out. And one of my favorite stories when I think of Coach Tomlin, I go back to 2016. This was my first time in Pittsburgh where we had an under 500 record. We were 4-5 at the time. We had just dropped 4 in a row. We lost to, I think it was Baltimore, New England, the Cowboys, and then we lost to the Dolphins as well. And we're sitting here at 4-5. And it's like, well, what are we going to do? Everybody's looking around. We're starting to point fingers, right? We're starting to seek comfort, something that he always talks about not doing. And then he comes in here and he has his team meeting. And he talks about how you got to cut your eyelids off in the face of adversity. You cannot blink. You can't shy away from this adversity. You can't shy away from this moment. You have to embrace this challenge. You have to embrace this opportunity, this obstacle, because once you overcome this thing, you're going to see how much you can really accomplish. And literally from that moment, we went out and won 9 games in a row, ended up going to the AFC Championship where we obviously got beat to the eventual Super Bowl champions. But to string off 9 in a row after being under 500 to go to the AFC Championship game, all from that moment, that's Coach Tomlin. We didn't have this crazy roster offensively and defensively. Did we have elite players? Sure. But we still had holes. We still have flaws. But his motivation, his belief in us is ultimately what made us believe in ourselves that we could do these things, that we could overcome the adversity and the doubters. And we ultimately did that.
It's great. I love how you put it because here we got two perspectives. I've been so blessed to be able to watch his career from an outside perspective, being on the sidelines and interviewing him and things of that nature. You see it from the outside. You have an inside the bubble perspective. You've seen him, you've played for him, you know him. The three things that I think stand out from an outside perspective, an outside guy looking on, is that he was always large and in charge from day one. He was always coaching, and he's always decisive. In 2007, when he was introduced in the press conference down on the South Side, I remember being in the room, and he comes in and he takes the room. They introduce him as the next Steelers head coach, and I'm sitting there going, wow, this guy's got something. He's got that charisma that jumps out and grabs you by the throat. You know what I mean? Without a doubt, he's large and in charge of the room, and I've never seen him not dominate a room he's been in. The second thing I couldn't believe was how he always coaches, whether it was Lawrence Timmons when he was a young buck, getting interviewed, and he walks by and says, LT, remember, under promise, over deliver, or Ike Redmond, I remember in 2010 at Baltimore, he catches a touchdown pass, 2:51 left. They win the game 13-10. Ike Redmond and Debo are out on the field getting interviewed by national TV. So I see Tomlin is standing outside the locker room, and I'm standing outside there too. He's waiting on the guys to come up. And Ike is about 20 yards ahead of Debo. And I hear Mike yell down the hallway to him, goes, hey, Isaac, pick it up a little bit. If you got to do more than just what you did to stay out on the field with Debo. He's always coaching, making sure that you understand your place. But the thing that I love, his decisiveness. You think about, and you were there, 2015, San Diego, right? At Qualcomm Stadium. The clock's running. There are no timeouts left. The great Heath Miller comes down 6 inches short of the goal line. There is pandemonium going on. They got a flag. I'm watching Tomlin because I watch him like a hawk on the sidelines. He's the coolest cat on the sidelines. He sends out a wildcat with Lev Bell because if you remember, Mike was playing. And time runs out as Lev Bell goes over the goal line, touchdown behind Rosie Nix and Dave DeCastro pulling. I'm telling you what, it was berserko on the sideline, but he was cool and calm throughout. There was never an indecision, never a doubt about what was happening. He made the call, and I really respect that because that's all I've ever seen in my, 20 years now, hanging out on sidelines and so forth. He has always been decisive.
Listen, man, I appreciate you bringing up that fun memory. I remember that game like it was yesterday. It was crazy. The back and forth, the pick six, the crazy touchdown throw that Ben draws up the play on the sideline. Vic makes the throw. All of those things are happening in that game. But absolutely, Coach Tomlin was cool and collected the whole time. That play before L. Bell scores, man, on the sideline, we're nuts. We're antsy. We're trying to figure out what's about to happen. And Coach T never bats an eye. I don't even think an ounce of sweat came off him. He was just so calm out there. And that's the thing that we always love. And that's, I think, why we're so confident in him, because he has elite level confidence in himself. When you look to your leader in these critical moments and he isn't nervous, he's not wavering in his decision, he's not blinking or batting an eye, that makes you have confidence like that. It rubs off on you. And when I think of him, the best things that I think of initially off the top of my head is how he relates to his players, how he's able to motivate these guys on a personal level. I mean, I think of me, right? And I was never this all Pro Bowl caliber player, but I was a starter. And he would come in and challenge me daily. He would find different ways to motivate me, different ways to just push me, to let me understand that just getting a sack isn't enough. Just making a tackle isn't enough. What can you do to impact the game significantly? That's when he was always challenging us as a defense and me personally. And we appreciated that because it never allowed us to become complacent. Even when people would pat us on the back, even when people said we're doing good, he still would find ways to let us know that it's still work to be done. And then the thing that I absolutely love is just his mind from a defensive standpoint. Outside of Dick LeBeau, he is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever been around from a defensive standpoint. And when I think of the coaches I've been around some guys that know some ball. They do this at a high level. But Coach Tomlin, his adjustments, his ability to predict what's going to happen, staying ahead of the curve, I just absolutely love that. And for me, that's something that I continue to push myself into this day in terms of my film study because it helps me understand the game on a higher level. But that all stems from Coach Tomlin and his impact. And to see that he's going to still be able to do that for this next group of guys, your Devin Bushes, your Robert Spillanes, all these younger players that are getting opportunities on defense, he's going to be pivotal in their development. And you don't want to, there's no other guy that you would want doing that outside of Coach Tomlin.
You know, what I love is everything you just highlighted there. And one of the things you talked about was his ability to stay ahead of the game. One of the things I loved to do was to follow him. And I started doing this because Tunch started doing this years ago. But then you notice you follow him around and you hear him drop coaching gems all the time. I mean, literally, whether it's talking about defensive backs and being able to on cover two, be able to do this or that, coming out of your back pedal, or are you sliding? And I mean, just the little nuances of
he's very detail oriented, right? Very detail oriented.
Yes, very detail oriented, and he's coaching them up, and you listen to what he says, and all of a sudden your understanding of the game starts to increase a lot because you're getting some stuff that you never would get sitting in the stands or watching it on TV.
Yeah, when he talks about living in the minutia, becoming comfortable in the minutia, honestly, I had never even heard that phrase spoken in football locker rooms, football meeting rooms until I got to Pittsburgh. And you got to think, I've been playing football since 4 years old, so I've been in a lot of meetings, right? But he was so focused on the minutia, on the fine details, because he understands at this level, that's what wins games. It's not these big explosive plays. It's the details play in and play out. That's the difference in wins and losses. And his understanding of that and his ability to relay that to his players and ultimately for them to understand the significance in that is why you're able to see sustained success with this plethora of talent, right? We've seen defensive player of the years, and then we've seen guys who are just good players, but all of them have been able to come here and have an impact because they understand detail in their work. And that's a message that comes from Coach Tomlin daily. I'm talking, it could be 6 a.m, you're in the weight room, he's coming in there. Hey, make sure you're detailing your work. Make sure you 6-inch step right here. Where's your hand placement? How are your eyes? What are you looking at? See what you're supposed to see. These are all things that he will talk to you. It doesn't matter if it's 6 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night before you're having room check the Saturday before the biggest game of your life. Coach Tomlin is always going to be talking about the details. He's always going to be talking about finding ways to get better, finding that winning edge. And that's the thing that I think all of his players really respect about him.
You know, I got to ask you one thing, because here's the thing with Coach Noll, and I tell you this, Mike Tomlin's very much like Coach Noll. I mean, he was always large and in charge. He's always coaching, and he was always decisive. But one of the things you hated was to mess up and then have to come back to the sidelines, because here's the deal. First of all, you got to decide, okay, do I go see him or do I make him come see me? All right. Now, here's the problem. If he comes to see me, he starts throwing bodies out of the way to come and see me. He's already madder than a hornet by the time he gets to me. Probably it's best to go and face the music. But at the same time, if something else happens, maybe he gets distracted. But you know what? I got to ask you what it's like when you mess up. What do you do when you got Coach T on the sideline?
Oh, man. So listen, I've messed up plenty of times, right? Coming into the sideline, I was one of those guys that, depending on how big the mess up was going to dictate my action. If it was something small, if I missed a tackle or if I blew a coverage, I'm just going to come over there right now and say, hey, coach, that was on me. I know I had to do this and this. My eyes were bad. This was wrong. And it's going to be a lot smoother, right? But I've tried this as well, where I've had a play go wrong and it results in a touchdown. And then I tried to go hide on the sideline. Yeah, that wasn't the best idea. Then he has to come find you, give you that stern talking, and then you think it's over, right? You think, all right, we're done. We're good to go. That's not the worst part. The worst part is the Monday morning meeting. When it's time to come in there, you're in the team meeting room, and he's pulling up the plays from the game on the big board in front of everyone. You talk about going from feeling like a champion to feeling like a zero. Man, when he is calling you out and critiquing you on what you did right and what you did wrong in front of your peers, it is one of the most humbling experiences. But the thing that you respect about him is he's going to do that with all his players. It's not just the small guys. It's not just the big guys. He's going to do that to whoever he feels need to be called out, because he'll say this continually. Just because I'm talking to this guy doesn't mean I'm only talking to this guy. If I'm critiquing him, if I'm correcting a mistake that he made, that's a correction for everybody in this room. And we would all understand that because he was consistent with that. And that's the thing that you love about a coach like him. You don't mind being called out in front of your peers. You don't mind being critiqued, but you wanted to be consistent. Don't just do it to me. Make sure you're doing it to that guy, to this guy, and to that guy. And that's the one thing with Coach Tomlin. He was going to consistently do that. But Wolf, my question to you is this. We hear a lot of people, because there is a divide, right, in terms of the perception around Coach Tomlin amongst Steeler Nation. Some people think that he's the gold standard for consistency. They absolutely love him. They think that he should be the guy going forward. But then other people feel like the lack of playoff wins from a recency standpoint has left this feeling underwhelming. My question to you, though, is, do you still think he can get it done? Do you still think he's the right guy for the job?
I don't think there's any question, Arthur, and we've laid out so many reasons why we want to see the continuity continue. One of the things that I think about Steelers football is you think since 1969, we've got three guys, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. Now think about that. You've got 23 years, 15 years, and 15 years, I believe.
Long time.
Okay,
that's
so
a long time.
Going there. All right, so it's right around there. But the fact is, those three coaches have set a foundation of consistency that, with the Steelers and the Rooneys have a way of doing business. They have a plan, they work the plan, and they stick with the plan. And that's the way it's been done. That's the way it's always been done. And you've seen some of the greatest success in the history of the National Football League lays in the fact that you have the Rooneys running the Steelers organization. You have people like Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin doing it. And I think that, Mike T is still way on top of his game. He's 49, like you said. He bursts and bubbles with energy.
I mean, he could coach for another 15 years. Think about that. Realistically, he could coach for another 15 years from where he's at right now. That's crazy. But we are so fortunate, though. We are very fortunate with that. And obviously, you do run into the scenario where some people will eventually take it for granted if they aren't already doing that because of the long-term success, because of the longevity. And my response to them is this. I've seen the other side of it. I've been in organizations where you're switching coaches every 2 years because you're trying to find the next best thing. You're trying to keep up and strike gold. But eventually you just see that, man, you're striking out a lot more than you're actually hitting on. And now you go through 20 years of just average play or below average play. And that's not the Steeler way. The Steeler way is excellence. The Steeler way is championships. And I want to have a coach that is going to be putting us closer and closer to that versus the contrary. And I feel like with Coach Tomlin, he puts us closer to winning a Lombardi in 2021, in 2022, and so forth. Versus if we were to go in a different direction right now, I don't think that makes us any closer. In fact, I think it takes us a step or two back. So that's why for me, man, even though he hasn't had the recent playoff success that we would like and that we think that he should have had, I feel that he can still get that job done at a high level.
As they always say, coaches coach, players play. When you and me used to walk across that white stripe, so endeth the lesson given by the coach on the sidelines, because you can't control what you can't control. And out there on the field, when the players take over, that's what it's about. But I think his motivational ability, his strategery, that he, you and I both acknowledge the fact he knows the game inside and out. Okay?
Absolutely.
I think the continuity speaks well for the future of Steelers football, which, by the way, I understand the critics are not giving the Steelers a lot of possible W's. I would say. In a year coming up with a 17th game, what are they predicting there, Arthur?
Man, so the bettors, the odds makers, they have the Steelers win-loss total set at 9 games. Now, that's with the addition of the 17th game. Remember that. So now we're not talking about 9-7. We're looking at 9-8. That's what the odds makers feel right now.
To me, that sure sounds like they're lacking there a little bit. There's a lot of people that are looking at the Cleveland game going, I don't see that at all. You know as well as I do, that game there from the get-go, it got out of hand. And there are games that always happen in everybody's career where it just gets out of control. I actually experienced it in '89 against the same Cleveland Browns at Three Rivers Stadium when we lost, 51-0. Oh yeah, it got out of hand right away. It didn't take long. So the fact is, put that aside. That's one of them games. I like the fact that I think the Steelers are well equipped to pull a 10 to 12 win, at least 10 to 13 win, somewhere in there.
Now, Wolf, I got to tell you, this is a family-friendly show. You can't talk up here about the slander of the Browns scoring 50 points on us anytime.
No, it's terrible.
You can't do that ever again. This is family friendly. We will get banned from the network if we're doing this. All right. So
Arthur,
we can't talk about that anymore.
I've been scarred for life. Okay. I've been scarred for life.
Jeez, I don't want to hear Cleveland scoring 50 anything. But as a whole, man, when you think about that Browns matchup, right? Couldn't the same thing be said about the first time we played them last year, where that game got out of hand right before halftime and we saw the results of that game? So that's how football goes sometimes, man. Sometimes teams are able to just get hot and everything goes right for them in a short span and the game gets out of hand. Sometimes you're on the winning end of it. Sometimes you're on the receiving end of it, but it happens. But that still doesn't deter me from thinking that this is a 10-plus win team. I think that that's what they are, even with the current people that they've brought back, the guys that they've lost, and we still don't even know how the draft is going to play out. Now, if they hit home runs on this draft, especially in those top 3 picks, well, now you might be talking 12 wins. But at the bare minimum, this is a 10-win team. I just don't see how this team is going to go and just win 9 games with an additional game out there with the pieces that they're bringing back. Now, if we want to talk about, are they going to win the Super Bowl next year? Different conversation. But this is still a high-quality football team that is going to very much be in contention next season with the roster constructed the way it is.
Well, I agree with you, Arthur. Matter of fact, we might be able to break it down for more next week, but we would be remiss if we did not mention that yesterday was one of the greatest days in Steelers history, because on April 25th, 1996, I believe it was like 25 years ago. Again, I need a fact checker for some of these things. Jerome Bettis was traded for by Bill Cowher, and the Steelers brought here. And as they say, Jerome came here, and as they say, the rest is history. My friend, Hall of Famer Jerome Bettis, brought to Pittsburgh. That was a great trade, was it not?
A legend in the game, absolutely. When I think of Jerome, a.k.a. Bussy, I mean, he's just a beast, but not just on the field. I think about him off the field as well. You know, me coming to Pittsburgh, I've really got a chance to build a relationship with him in some of his nonprofit work, and to see his impact just as much as it was on the field is still continuing off the field. I love that about him. But getting back to on the field, I mean, one of my absolute favorite plays is when he ran through Brian Urlacher. I mean, let's be real. You talk about at the time, Urlacher was one of the most feared inside linebackers in the game. And to see what Bussy was able to do to him in that game, that moment, it gets no bigger. But then I just love, in terms of one of my favorite quotes from him, it was NFL Films. They're doing the pregame, recording him, and he's just simply just jogging around, laughing and stretching. He says, wait till they get a load of me. And he goes out there and dominates. Like, I love that. You don't know how many times I've said that to myself before I go out there to a game, just because Jerome said that, and I was a big fan of his game. So without a doubt, man, a true legend. And I'm just glad to be able to say that I shared the same uniform as he did, man.
Absolutely. I do too. And I look at it this way. One of my favorite moments that I remember, one of my favorite memories of Jerome, was when Joey Porter held all the boys back at Super Bowl 40 in Detroit. And JB comes out and takes the field when they introduce the Steelers. He's all by himself, spotlighted. And he turns around, and none of the guys there. And I remember talking to him later on. He said, I was all out of here. I turn around, I'm screaming. I look, none of my guys are here. And I'm standing out there. But I thought, what a great show of respect by Joey Porter and
absolutely
the rest of the guys, James Ferrier. They held everybody back and then gave JB the sole spotlight in hometown of Detroit in Super Bowl 40. I just thought that was excellent.
Yeah, he definitely deserved it. He definitely earned it. And I'm just glad that the bus was able to not just stop in Detroit, but it was able to stop in Canton as well, man, where it rightfully deserved to be.
And that's a stop for us. Thank you, Arthur, for joining us. Thank you, all you Steeler fans. Remember, go Steelers.